Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Dave Epstein, and this is The Issues in March 2012. This week, we're going to be talking about transportation in Toronto. We're going to be talking about Toronto elections, Canada elections for that matter. We're going to be talking about how to deal with getting a traffic ticket in part one of the four-part series on how to deal with traffic tickets. We're also going to be talking about what's going on for March break, entertainment, and strikes pending potentially in Toronto. Quickly, I want to talk about what's going on in Russia. It seems that Vladimir Putin is now the president of Russia, or the president-elect, better said. And when he did get the win in the election, it seems that Barack Obama did not send him a congratulations, which has caused a little animosity between the two nations and the two leaders. Now, this comes as a very turbulent time, especially what's going on in the Middle East. And only time will be able to tell as to whether or not this is going to be a solved solution. But one thing I quickly want to step on and sort of talk about during this intro is I had a conversation with a friend about democracy. And the question was, do you believe that the entire world should be democratic? And the other question is, do you believe that the UN has a purpose in today's world? And I'm going to say the UN is probably the most important organization on the planet. And the reason for this, as much as it's become dilapidated itself, it's the only organization in the world that has a United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which basically came out of the Second World War and protects every human on the planet in equal opportunity. Now, Canada has the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The Americas, or the United States of America, has their Constitution, and every nation has their own interpretation of this charter. The catch that makes it very important is the UN was put into place to protect places like Syria, protect places like Egypt. In 1958, Lester B. Pearson sent Canadian soldiers, well, not Canadian, but United Nations soldiers, for the first time ever, before United Nations soldiers even existed, to Egypt to solve the Suez Canal crisis. Now, if you look at what's going on in Egypt now, with regards to the Arab Spring, it might be inclined to say, hey, or we might be inclined as a people to say, hey, let's send the UN peacekeepers back to where they were invented, and let's actually bring a democracy to Egypt, get them in the UN, and let's reform the UN altogether and make it an organization that's an organization about democracies. If your country has not elected your president or premier or prime minister or whatever it is through an election, you should not have access to the UN. And that should be the way it works. There should also be a trade agreement between these organizations to encourage other nations to become part of the UN. But the problem, it doesn't only lie on the world scale. It doesn't only lie here in Canada. The problem is a universal thing that has to do with everybody, where it's a message that once you get there, you don't have to work to be there. You just have to work to get there. So what I need you to do is remind these guys, 4 years is what you get in a term in office. Work your 4 years if you want 4 more. David Epstein, see you soon.
Hello and thanks for watching. We hope you are enjoying this week's show. If you or someone you know has something to talk about and would like to get it out, come on an episode of The Issues. Please call or email the number on the screen. Once more, thanks for tuning in this week, and we hope to see you next time.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back in. This is Dave Epstein again. We're going to talk about what's going on at Queen's Park. The progressive conservative leader Tim Hudak has got on the bandwagon for subways, which has ultimately reduced the amount of support that Rob Ford has when he lost the battle of subways versus LRTs to Karen Stintz. Now, I don't want to focus too much time on this issue as I have dedicated way too much in the past. But what I want to talk about is Toronto Transit, period. Okay? The Toronto Transit system is dead. It does not work for the city of Toronto. It has been for far too long outdated. Now, we have spent a lot of money in our taxes paying for something called Transit City. And rather than building Transit City, what we have is we have a lack of doing anything. So people say to me on the regular, Dave, aren't you a fan of subways? I am a fan of subways. Do you know what else I'm a fan of? Getting it done. And it's about time that the city of Toronto starts to work for the people they represent rather than being self-absorbed and like to hear the sound of their own voice. Okay, so where we're going now. is the 3 lines from the subway system that would provide the LRT, or that the LRT would provide, would basically solve a lot of problems and allow more people to use the system. Now, when you have increased ridership, you will have more people paying that $3 ridiculous rate for a dilapidated system, but they'll be willing to pay $3 for a half-decent system. And now you can sort of turn around and say, okay, now we have more ridership, we're making more income. Now we can start building subways. I also want to quickly just touch on the lottery idea. This is a Metrolinx issue, okay? And the reason I'm saying Metrolinx issue is Metrolinx is the TTC to the province, in the sense that they deal with transit for the entire province of Ontario rather than any individual municipality. So, well, if Metrolinx came out with a lottery, let's say it was a $1 lottery to replace Lotto 649, and the prizes were anything from a 1-month bus pass to $100,000 to a brand new car, but they were transit related, you would also encourage people who are on the transit system to buy into this lottery. And one day you could actually make it so that all transportation in Ontario were free if the lottery could generate enough revenue in order to provide that service. The idea of not even talking about it on the provincial level is the problem here. Because if you can say to somebody, hey, logistics is a city issue, a world issue, everybody needs to get around, we have to get to work, we have to get products into stores, there's a million things we have to do. And improving public transit will make all of those things a lot easier. So let's get Transit City built. Let's start planning where we need the subway lines. Let's just not build them because it sounds like a good idea. Let's say, okay, there is an overflow of passengers on this area. Let's do that. Let's build a transit line there. But more importantly, I also want to focus on intelligent building, because the line that's going from the airport to Union Station is not in the best interest of the people of Toronto. It's a big waste of money, and it's going to take way too long to do. If that line went from the airport to Yorkdale and followed the 401, it was an above ground rail system, it would be cheaper, it would be faster, and it would be built sooner. I think the people of Toronto need to stop questioning what's going on and need to start focusing on getting things done. So get out there, make sure you're pushing to get Transit City finished. And I'm going to finish this on this really quick note. I don't know if you've been to other global cities or other world cities, or the big cities in the world is what I'm trying to say. Those cities have a 2-tier system. They have, and not 2-tier meaning you pay once, you pay twice. 2-tier, there's an above ground and there's a below ground. So if you want to go one way, you can take the above ground routes and maybe shorten your distance. Over longer distance, you take the underground routes. It also allows for less congestion on the system. So get out there, make sure your local politician on the provincial and municipal level know you want something done, and you don't want it yesterday, you want it a week ago.
Hello and thanks for watching. We hope you are enjoying this week's show. If you or someone you know has something to talk about and would like to get it out, come on an episode of The Issues. Please call or email the number on the screen. Once more, thanks for tuning in this week, and we hope to see you next time.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back in. My name's Dave Epstein again, and we're going to talk about what's going on with campaign finance, election reform, and what we've all been hearing about in the news lately, this robocall scandal. Now, I'm going to quickly get you up to date on this robocalls issue. It seems that in London, Ontario, was where this all began. People were getting phone calls from an automated system, that said, hey, go over here and you can vote there. And it turns out that the information that they were getting was completely incorrect. It turns out that it's said that the opposition was sending false calls to predominantly opposite voters in order to get them not to vote. Now, it turns out that the amount of people that went out and voted in the last election was actually really high, so it wasn't successful. The thing here is that we went from a minority government to a majority government, and that means a big change for the people of Canada, because now a majority government can get things done where it's a lot harder to get things done when you have to work together in a minority government. So why is this important to everybody in Canada? Because if you didn't want the Conservative government and you wanted to elect a Liberal guy and you ended up getting a Conservative guy because of fraud, Well, that's going to change the whole country. And as much as it's just a small thing, one riding or two ridings or three ridings or four, that's 4 seats that could have gone elsewhere that we don't know what the truth is going to be. Now, I want to sort of focus more importantly on overall campaign finance. First of all, I don't believe that it's right for politicians to be calling you at home during the election period. That's a sort of a harassment. You shouldn't be getting calls from people encouraging you to do something. If someone wants your vote, I'm encouraging politicians to get up, go door to door like they used to, and encourage you. Send out the mail outs. Do whatever you can. But, bothering people at 5:30, 6 o'clock when they're sitting down to dinner is just completely inappropriate. Other things that are bothering me about election finance is how much money these guys actually spend and where the money comes from and who's paying for it in the end. Now, some people spend $30,000, some $50,000, and even more on an election. And to be honest, there's no need for this dramatic waste of tax dollars. Campaign finance should be limited. $20,000, $30,000, or even if, let's say you have $70,000 or 70,000 people in your riding, you should have $1 per person or 50 cents per person or whatever it is. It should be equalized for everybody. Another thing is we should reduce the amount of government subsidy into these programs. And last off, understand that when someone makes a donation to a political candidate and says, here's, $370, he gets a tax return of 75 cents on the dollar. Now, where do you think that 75 cents comes from? It comes from tax dollars. So money that could go to healthcare, money that could go to transit, money that could go to, I don't want to list everything that the money can go to, but there's a lot of things on the table, more important and more pressing on whether or not this person or that person gets elected. Politics has to come down to a simpler level where people are actually represented by their representatives. For too long it's gone on that people have been elected to office and forget about the people that they swore to represent. It's not about being friends. It's not about being acquaintances. It's not about being associated. And I'm just touching on this really quickly before we end the segment, is there was a conservative member of parliament that was on a committee that dealt with veterans and homelessness. And this guy fell asleep in the last week during the discussion. And rather than, apologizing for his behavior, he's blaming other people for his actions. And this is the people this person was elected by the majority of the people in their area. And those people have to sort of stop and look at themselves in the mirror for a second and say, hey, is this how I want to be reflected on a world scale? Because that's what these people are. These politicians on the federal level are basically you represented by them on a global scale. So if that's not how you want the world to recognize Canada, next election, you are responsible for making the change.
Hello and thanks for watching. We hope you are enjoying this week's show. If you or someone you know has something to talk about and would like to get it out, come on an episode of The Issues. Please call or email the number on the screen. Once more, thanks for tuning in this week, and we hope to see you next time.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back in. We're going to do part 1 of the 4-part series on how to deal with a traffic violation or parking ticket. Now, parking and part 1 is going to have to do with traffic and parking, and they're all pretty much going to, and they're very similar. Let's get parking out of the way. You're in a store, you're doing your shopping, you come outside, you find a little yellow ticket on your car. You're wondering, what did I do? Probably something wrong. You probably parked in the fire spot, you probably parked in a handicap zone, or maybe you just parked on the line and they gave you a ticket for it. I've never seen it, but anything in this world is possible. All right, what do? You file a court date. Okay, simple. Part 1 for parking tickets, done. Let's move on to traffic tickets. Now you're driving in your car and you do something that could be construed as illegal. An officer pulls you over. I would suggest it's in your best interest to provide the officer with any assistance you can in order to try to make him be as lenient as possible. You're not making him be lenient, you're encouraging it by good behavior. Now the other option is you're driving in your car and you haven't done anything wrong, but it seems you're being pulled over anyway. Now your options here are a little different because One, this is going to agitate you. You've been pulled over for no reason. Two, who knows why the officer pulled you over? They might actually have a reason that is of complete and utter ignorance to you. So when the officer pulls you over, it's in your best interest not to help the officer. I'm not saying be mean to the officer or rude, but honestly, be a reflection of the officer. If the officer comes up to you and is not forthcoming with information and is not helpful in why he's pulling you over, there's no reason to help him. So keep your mouth shut, be intelligent. If anything, don't answer when you don't have to. But moving on, what do you do once you've gotten that ticket now? Whether you're guilty or not, your choices are simple. Okay, you have the option of paying the ticket. You have the option of filing for a conviction with an excuse, if you will. Or option C is setting a date for trial. Now, if you do go with option C, I would suggest you contacting an organization called filemytickets.com, and they will file your ticket for you. You can also go into the courthouse within 15 days and file the ticket yourself. Now, I think or encourage you to go in and deal with the ticket yourself. And the reason for this is getting familiar with the government system and how it works inside government offices is very important. The institution of government is always the same. Whenever you're in a government building, there's no difference. There's a lineup, there's someone behind the counter who's not doing as good of a job as they should, and there's the door. So those are your options. Now, when you go to file your ticket, file the trial date. They're going to tell you 6 months from now, they're going to send you a court date in the mail. Now, when you get that court date in the mail, I suggest you watch part 2 of the 4-part series on how to deal with a traffic ticket.
Hello and thanks for watching. We hope you are enjoying this week's show. If you or someone you know has something to talk about and would like to get it out, come on an episode of The Issues. Please call or email the number on the screen. Once more, thanks for tuning in this week, and we hope to see you next time.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning back in. Once again, I'm David Epstein, and I'd like to thank you for following this issue of The Issues. We're going to talk quickly about entertainment. And what I want to start with is Ontario Place. It's in its 26th year, I believe. Last year was its 25th anniversary, and the park was actually free to all guests. Not rides, but to get in, it was of no cost to you or me. Now, this year, because the usership is down, they're deciding to shut it down to reconcile the program. And when they do this, that's going to be one less thing for people in Toronto to do for entertainment this summer. Now, there's still Canada's Wonderland, the C&E will still be here, but I want to talk really quickly about the casino idea that has been slighted to go into Ontario Place for a while now, and they're going to talk about it this month at Queen's Park. Now, this would encourage more usership of the park. However, I don't know if it would necessarily bring families to the park to use it because of the fact that you're talking about something that's an adult-only establishment. All right, but the truth is why can't they renovate Ontario Place while it's in use? They're going to leave part of it open, but at the same point in time, that's a lot of land to close down to the people of Toronto. And even if people are just going to walk around there to entertain themselves on a hot summer day, that's still something that should be an option to them, where this summer it's not going to be. Now, I want to talk quickly about Local 79, Air Canada, and possible strikes that will be happening in the next month or so. Now, March break is just around the corner, and Air Canada might get you to your destination, but they might not get you home. And I have no qualms with Air Canada. I choose to fly them whenever I can. But at the same point, you have to look at it from a perspective is if Air Transat, I don't even know if they exist anymore, but if they do, if they're going to get you to and from your destination in a smaller seat without a heads-up display, I might be more inclined to fly with them if I know I'm going to get home at the end of my vacation. All right? As for Local 79 and the strike that's going to be happening there, we haven't heard anything about that. Actually, yesterday was the deadline of whether or not they can put forward the motion in order to have a strike or a lockout within 17 days. The lack of news is positively encouraging, but when the strike comes, or if a strike comes, or if a walkout comes, or if a lockout comes, or whatever it is, it's going to be detrimental to the city of Toronto. And rather than solving the problem now, or bringing attention to the problem now, or publicizing the problem now, we sort of are keeping our mouths shut about it and not sort of focusing on Local 79 and what they actually do for the community. And they do a lot, don't get me wrong. I don't use these programs. These programs are predominantly for people like senior citizens or people who are incapable of, doing things themselves. These programs are there to help you. Now remember that, because when you say to yourself, why was the GM of the TTC making almost $300,000 a year, but I can't get my dentures cleaned? You have to ask Toronto Council. And I'm not going to get into a whole discussion on TTC. I'm not going to get into a whole discussion on the politics with regards for Jobs for Life. It's just, I'm going to finish on this. It's about time that the people that we elect become adult and responsible. And the funny thing about it is, these people that apply to represent people by going and joining in on elections and running for public office, these people do it in a very mature and respectful fashion. And then once they get elected, it's like they're back in school and it's kindergarten and these guys are having recess. So what we need to do is ring the bell, get everybody back in and back to work. David Epstein, see you next time on The Issues.